Muy buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todos los que se conectan de cualquier parte del mundo. Gracias por unirse al tercer día del Foro de Salud Digital Recaínza 2021, Salud Digital para Todos, en el marco de la celebración de la Semana de la Salud Digital, organizada por Transform Health. Y bien, hoy tenemos, como siempre, preparada una extraordinaria agenda llena de actividades, 2 conferencias magistrales, 3 paneles de discusión y un taller interactivo que les garantizarán mucho conocimiento, muchas buenas prácticas en salud digital. Y bueno, quiero compartirles detalles de la agenda de hoy para que puedan conectarse, esperando puedan acompañarnos en todas y cada una de las actividades que hemos organizado con mucho cariño de parte de todo el equipo de Recaínza y de todos los expertos de Latinoamérica y de otras partes del mundo que se han unido a esta actividad. Para iniciar el día, vamos a tener una conferencia magistral a cargo de la señora Kirsten Matheson. Kirsten es la jefe de políticas en Transform Health y ella va a estar conversando con nosotros sobre gobernanza de datos para la cobertura universal en salud. Posteriormente, vamos a tener un panel, un conversatorio en el que vamos a conocer sobre el poder de las redes de salud digital para el intercambio de conocimiento, experiencias y buenas prácticas en salud digital. Tenemos invitados a expertos que pertenecen a las principales redes de salud digital del mundo, así que no se pierdan ese panel. Posteriormente, vamos a tener un conversatorio muy interesante sobre gestión de conocimientos e investigación en salud digital. Hemos invitado a referentes en el tema de la región de Latinoamérica, quienes van a estar compartiendo sobre este tema con todos ustedes. Posteriormente tenemos un siguiente panel de discusión y este es acerca de la oferta formativa en salud digital. Vamos a estar hablando de los avances y de los retos en América Latina. Vamos a tener de igual forma representantes de algunas de las más prestigiosas instituciones educativas de nuestra región. Y finalmente, la siguiente conferencia magistral, la conferencia de cierre, tenemos como invitado especial al señor José Francisco García Gutiérrez de la Organización Panamericana de la Salud, quien va a estar compartiendo con nosotros sobre recursos humanos en salud 4.0. Y él nos va a compartir sobre nuevas competencias para el nuevo paradigma de trabajo. Y finalmente, para aquellos que se registraron en nuestros talleres interactivos, hoy tenemos un taller muy interesante sobre arquitectura abierta para el intercambio de información en salud. Vamos a conocer toda la parte de fundamentos de OpenHIE, así que si aún no se han registrado, están a tiempo de hacerlo. Y bueno, sin más preámbulo, quiero presentarles a la señora Kirsten Matheson. Ella es la jefe de políticas en Transform Health. Para nosotros es un honor contar con ella en este tercer día del Foro de Salud Digital Recaínza 2021. Comentarles que esta sesión se realizará en inglés, así que todos tienen en la barra la opción de interpretación para que puedan escoger el idioma de su preferencia. También comentarles que estamos en vivo a través de nuestro canal de YouTube. Así que, Kirsten, sin más preámbulo, la audiencia es toda tuya. Bienvenida.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are in the world. And I just want to thank Jocelyn and the rest of the team at Gobernanza for inviting me to be part of this important digital health forum this week as part of Digital Health Week. I'm really excited to be here to talk about health data governance within the context of universal health coverage. So if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen. So as we all know, and as we're talking about throughout this week and beyond, health systems around the world are becoming increasingly digitalized, which, if done right, holds a huge potential to improve the efficiency, the quality, and the reach of health services, leading to more equitable health access and outcomes. However, with this has come a vast increase in the amount of health data that is collected and used. The collection and use of health data has grown in complexity and has become increasingly indivisible from the operation of health systems and the provision of health services. Given this rapid evolution in health technologies and tools and the collection and use of health data, this has sparked the need for stronger and more equitable governance of that data to ensure that it supports public good. While more and more countries and regions are instituting and developing health data governance policies and legislation, there's not yet a comprehensive, globally unifying set of principles, nor a global framework to inform the governance of health data, especially one that's focused on universalizing the benefits of digitalization in health. And existing instruments also don't capture the lived realities of communities and primary healthcare providers, nor do they address the different stakeholders and community needs. Global alignment on the basics will help promote a common understanding of what health data governance should accomplish. This is also needed to help establish global and national benchmarks, standards, and guidelines to help prevent the misuse of data, to reduce the misuse of data, and to address gaps around missing data. So how can we respond to this gap? How can governments unlock the potential of digital health, ensuring that data supports public good while safeguarding data privacy, ownership, and security? At Transform Health, together with a number of our partners, we're calling for the development of an inclusive global health data governance framework, which is underpinned by core equity and human rights principles, so that people and institutions can share, use, and benefit from health data. Transform Health, together with our partners, including Gobernanza, is aiming to fill this gap by stewarding the development of a set of representative and human rights-based health data governance principles to enable the equitable and responsible management of health data while safeguarding data privacy, ownership, and security. The principles seek to align stakeholders around core tenets of health data governance, creating a shared vision and environment where all people and communities can share, use, and benefit from that health data. The principles recognize and build on other important initiatives in this space, including the recommendations of the recent report of the Lancet and Financial Times Commission on Governing Health Futures 2030, which expressly calls for a new approach to the collection and use of health data, which focuses on prioritizing individual rights, promoting the public good potential of such data, and building a culture of data justice and equity. The proposed principles aim to complement these efforts while strengthening the health data governance ecosystem. The principles are intended as a resource for a variety of stakeholders involved in the governance of health data, including governments, international organizations, the private sector, nonprofit organizations, research and academic institutions, foundations, civil society, and global coalitions. They target governments, developers, and other stakeholders that connect and use health data and can eventually be used as a mechanism to hold them accountable to equity and human rights agendas. The principles are being developed and driven by civil society through an inclusive and consultative bottom-up process. This has included so far a landscape analysis of existing data governance mechanisms, 7 global and regional consultations, which together has brought together over 185 contributors from 134 organizations to gather perspectives and expertise across geographies, sectors, and stakeholders. Regional consultations have been carried out across Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East and Northern Africa, Southeast and Central Asia, Latin America and the Caribbean, and Europe, North America, and the Pacific. Global consultations convened global experts on health data governance and young experts, which have been critical to have their views captured as we develop the principles. The support of many partners has been instrumental to this process and to ensuring the success of a consultative process, including Recainsa, who's been instrumental, PATH, AHIN, BID Learning Network, the Lancet FT Commission, Muon Events, Wilton Park, and Young Experts Tech for Health. Now, currently, the principles are out for a public consultation, which is lasting 1 month, and it will run until the end of this week. So please do participate in the consultation and have your voice heard. And this public consultation aims at allowing the principles to be further strengthened, supported, and endorsed by an even broader audience before they are launched in early 2022. Now I'll take you through the proposed health data governance principles, including their unique value add, their framing and objectives, as well as what each principle entails. And just before I go through the principles specifically, I just want to speak a little bit on the value add of the principles and what they add and contribute to the health data governance ecosystem. So a key feature of the principles is that they focus on universalizing the benefits of health digitalization. Universal health coverage must be at the core of the design and development of data-driven health systems, and UHC has guided the development of these principles. They also bring a strong human rights and equity lens to the use of data within health systems and are oriented towards supporting sustainable and resilient public health systems. Another key feature, which I already mentioned before about how they were developed, is that they are being developed and driven through an inclusive and consultative process. And I really want to emphasize this point because this is ensuring that they reflect the perspectives of diverse stakeholder groups and that they're really driven by civil society to push forward important principles that need to be considered in the governance of health data. So the health data governance principles that are currently out for public consultation include 8 principles, which are framed around 3 interconnected objectives. This includes core principles around protecting people, both individuals and communities, and a set of principles around promoting health value through data sharing and its innovative uses. However, the principles go beyond this to include forward-looking principles around prioritizing equity and the role of equitably distributing the benefits that arise from digitization and digitalization of health systems towards delivering universal health coverage. Most current approaches to data governance take more of an individualistic view. However, our proposed principles balance both the individual and collective perspectives within each of the 3 objectives. So around protecting people, this considers the importance of group and community data protections as well as individual. Around promoting health value, this speaks to the collective needs and benefits of public health systems. And prioritizing equity requires equity amongst groups in addition to individuals. The principles are designed to complement and reinforce one another. As such, they are not weighted or listed in any priority order. Each principle is supported by core tenets that further describe it and how it may be put into practice. So the first cluster of principles, as I mentioned, is around protecting people. Health data governments must ensure protection for people and communities against harm. Protection for individuals is often embodied in general data protection laws. However, health data can be very sensitive, and the misuse of such data, whether that be of individual or aggregate data, could expose both individuals and communities to significant long-standing harm. Therefore, health data of all types requires special measures of protection against harm. So the first principle under this cluster is on protecting individuals and communities at every stage of the data lifecycle, and on balancing protection of individuals and communities with the societal value of data use for health. Core tenets under this principle include, for example, collecting data that is purpose-driven, collect personally identifiable or sensitive data only as appropriate, use secure data collection, storage, and dissemination mechanisms, address individual and collective risk, define inappropriate uses of health data, use de-identification and anonymization, and provide guidance specific to marginalized populations. The second principle under this first cluster focuses on building trust and reinforcing trust in data collection and use and in data systems themselves. Safeguarding data, preserving privacy, and establishing transparent and inclusive processes is critical for this. Core tenets include aligning with data protection and privacy best practices, prioritizing transparent processes and systems, requiring informed consent and articulating within this the complexities, defining concrete exceptions to informed consent requirements, reinforcing health data governance with evidence, improving data quality, availability, and accessibility, and instituting feedback and accountability mechanisms. The third principle focuses on advancing data security. This includes various dimensions around the collection, storage, use, dissemination, analysis, and disposal of health data. Core tenets include requiring strong security measures for data collection, storage, use technologies, mitigating risks related to security breaches, and ensuring transparency around breaches, as well as federated data systems. So that was the first cluster of principles that we have. The second cluster is around promoting health value. Within this, health data governance must maximize the value offered by the use of data to improve health outcomes. Much of data's value lies in patterns that are found within the data, which underlines a need for sharing and aggregating health data. Data silos can lead to under-optimal production of health value. So within this, there are two core principles. The first one is on enhancing health systems and services, including efficiency and resilience, and improvement and expansion of health services, which will help contribute to UHC. Core tenets include evaluating the benefits of health data, enhancing health services for individuals and communities, considering all types of health benefits, encouraging data-led insights and action, engaging the general public around health impact, and reinforcing health system resilience. The second principle under this second cluster is around promoting data sharing and interoperability. This is central to creating health value and allows for deeper and more significant insights into health needs and challenges, including preventing and responding to health emergencies. Core tenets include promoting interoperability of data systems, establishing data sharing policies, supporting multi-sectoral partnerships, validating informed consent before sharing data, using common definitions, using global data standards and coding, defining multiple levels of access to the data, and defining common data structures across health systems. And then the third principle under this one is around facilitating innovation, including looking at emerging technologies and leveraging innovation possibilities to help make progress towards UHC. Core tenets include addressing non-health data that may support public health equity, supporting policy innovation, and applying health data governance to emerging technologies. And finally, the third cluster of the principles is focused on prioritizing equity. So health value created by the use of data must equitably benefit individuals and communities. People should have an equitable stake in the health value that their data generates. So the first principle is on ensuring equitable benefit. This must be central to health data governance, including equitable representation in data of all individuals and communities and equitable access to data. So core tenets under this principle include ensuring that all populations are represented, considering the unique needs of marginalized populations, reducing and mitigating bias, implementing inclusive data feedback mechanisms, using accessible language and addressing knowledge gaps, promoting equitable impact and benefit. And the final principle is on establishing data rights and ownership. Individuals and communities have a right to know, control, and determine how their data is used and must be able to benefit equitably from such data. Core tenets include applying a human rights lens to health data governance, codifying data rights and ownership. Data rights and ownership should extend to derived product and services, defining clear roles and responsibilities, participatory data governance mechanisms, and connecting to broader accountability mechanisms. So, as I said, once the current draft of these principles are out for public consultation, and we really encourage you to input to that consultation. I'll provide a link at the end of the presentation. We will then take all of this feedback and finalize the set of principles with the aim of launching them in early 2022 through global, regional, and national events. And we really look forward to working with regional partners on those launches, particularly at regional level. And we want to really encourage wide community ownership and use of the principles. And to do this, they will be hosted on their own website. They won't be Transform Health principles. We want them to really be owned by the community so that they can use them and use them to hold governments accountable and urge their endorsements. So we will be urging organizations and governments to endorse the principles, and logos of endorsing organizations and governments will be published on the website, together with resources to support the use of the principles by different stakeholder groups. We will also widely disseminate the principles to really encourage their use, support, and endorsements, as well as to socialize them at local level. And we really look forward to working with different partners to help with that, with all elements of that, including really ensuring that they get down to local levels and people know about the principles and can use them. So once the principles are finalized, it's crucial that they are endorsed by governments and other stakeholders to guide the collection and use of health data. These should also underpin and contribute to the development of a global framework, which would support and guide governments to ensure the participatory, equitable, and efficient governance of health data so that all people can benefit equally from the collection and use of health data in support of universal health coverage. We encourage the principles and a future global health governance framework to then be adopted and adapted at regional and national levels to really drive the change that's needed to improve the governance of health data. So we really look forward to the actions of governments and other stakeholders to help drive this agenda forward, to ensure that all people and communities can share, use, and benefit from health data. For example, we encourage governments to publicly endorse the principles and champion them and champion the development of a global health data governance framework at the WHO Executive Board meeting in January and at the World Health Assembly in May. For example, by proposing and supporting the inclusion of an agenda item on health data governance at the World Health Assembly to ensure that it is discussed by member states and is central to the agenda. And then during the World Health Assembly, if an agenda item is proposed, we call on governments to support and encourage the development of a global health data governance framework, including by supporting the development of a World Health Assembly resolution on this for later adoption the following year. We also encourage governments and other stakeholders to ensure that health data governance is prioritized as part of other key global and regional agendas and platforms. For example, as part of the G20, as part of the Organization of American States, as part of the UNGA in September, among others. We encourage other stakeholders, including civil society, to also play a leading role, including supporting and championing this agenda and advocating with governments and regional bodies to endorse the principles, support the development of a framework, and adapt these at national and regional levels. And importantly, we also encourage all stakeholders and civil society to hold governments and regional bodies accountable to the principles and the framework and to equity and human rights agendas. And we feel like the principles and the framework can be used as an accountability tool for this. These actions can be done on an ongoing basis, as well as around key global, regional, and national influencing moments, as well as around global health days, where this agenda and key asks can really be highlighted and championed, including through meetings with decision makers, events and meetings to bring together key stakeholders, by elevating and amplifying the voices of communities, particularly the most marginalized, and meaningfully engaging them in discussions and also by pushing these out to really amplify them through social media and media outreach, among others. We also encourage organizations themselves to endorse the principles. So we really want governments to endorse them, but we want organizations themselves to really buy into and endorse the principles and any future framework. We feel that all governments, partners, and stakers must play a part in this collaborative effort to help ensure progress on this agenda. So as we look to finalize the principles, we really encourage those on the call and beyond to check out the consultation website, to read the principles, which are available in 3 languages, and to share your feedback through the survey before the public consultation closes at the end of this week. We want really encourage people to have your voice heard and to raise your voice to help advance this agenda. So I would like to thank you for that. And I just wanted to also add just a few questions on there, bit food for thought, because it'd be great to get perspectives from those on the call. So whether you have your own questions, or I would really like to also pose some questions. It's really great to get insights and perspectives from all of you on how we can encourage the use of the principles and secure wide endorsement at all levels. How can we galvanize support for the development of and endorsement of a health data governance framework? And what are some of the key opportunities to drive this agenda forward over the coming years? And what is the role of different stakeholders in doing this? Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you very much for this great presentation. And I do have a few questions for you. I know that developing unifying principles at a global level for a stronger health data governance that are based on human rights and enable equitable and accountable health data management while safeguarding data privacy, ownership, and security is a priority for Transform Health in the coalition. Could you share with us how all this great idea, how all this process was born?
Absolutely. Well, as Transform Health was established, they were really established as a coalition to bring together different coalition partners to really drive forward on the agenda of how digital health and the digitalization of primary healthcare systems, and more so on the access to primary healthcare systems in the digital age, can really make progress on this agenda to help accelerate progress towards UHC. And within this and setting up the coalition to really drive forward and advocate on this agenda and to really champion this issue, we recognize that there was one of the key kind of issues and gaps that was coming out within this was that as health systems are becoming more digitalized, well, it creates a huge potential to improve health access and close equity gaps. This has also led to the increased proliferation of health data that is coming out of this digitalization. But we found that in looking at the landscape around this, there lacked strong enough governance functions at the global level and to set those kind of national and global benchmarks around it to really govern the collection and use of that health data. So we realized that while there are different initiatives out there, there was a lack of a kind of comprehensive, globally unifying set of principles to help guide the collection and use of that health data. And so seeing this gap in this space, we thought it was a gap we could try to fill. And by working in coalition with our partners and other partners outside of the coalition, how we can come together and drive this forward. Also really key to that, we felt that, developing a set of health data governance principles should not sit within one country on its own, one organization doing it. So it was really central to us, as much as we feel that we're stewarding the development of the principles, but we're doing that very much in partnership and driving it through a consultative process, which is central to all of the work of Transform Health, to really ensure that kind of consultative, inclusive process for this, so that we are getting the different stakeholder perspectives and buy-in, and that it's really reflected in what's developed and come out of this.
Thank you, Kristen. And regarding the process of the consultation in Latin America and the Caribbean, what were the findings that this process brought us?
Yeah, so it was really great, the role that different partners have played, including Gobernanza, as part of the regional consultations. So it really brought in to understand from different stakeholders, kind of where are the gaps, what are some of the core issues that really need to guide the development and the governance of health data? What are some of the most important issues to make sure that health data is driving equity, that it's respecting human rights, that it's providing protection around data, building trust in the systems? So we, as you know, we carried out the consultations across various regions as well as globally, which brought together these various perspectives, which has led to the current draft that is out for public consultation now. And it's just, so this is really a reflection of what everyone has told us through these consultations, as well as building on the existing evidence from the landscape analysis, et cetera, of what are some of these core areas, but looking at what's already out there, what is missing from that. And that really elevated some key issues. And I think particularly, which has come through strong in these principles, is, you know, how we can ensure this is really driving progress on UHC. And also how it's really, we are looking at equity as central to the discussion, equity and rights, which must be central to it. It's about really ensuring that the digitalization of health systems really helps to, you know, it's happening. We had an event yesterday where one of the statements was said, it's there. It's already happening, the digitalization of health systems, but how can we make sure it works for everyone? And the collection of the data around that, how can we make sure that works for everyone, so that they see themselves reflected in it? It's really protecting their rights, but also promoting their improved access as well. So these are just some of the things that really came out strongly across the different consultations, which has led to the current draft.
Extraordinary, Kristen. And you mentioned that the consultation is in the status of public comments. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So as I said, there are the various global and regional consultations that led to the current draft. So these were held to really gather the perspectives of a lot of experts in this space across regions, different stakeholder groups, et cetera. So as I mentioned, over 185 perspectives have fed into this, from diverse geographies, stakeholder groups, youth, which was really central to it. So that's developed into the current draft. But we wanted to make sure that beyond this already large number of experts and people that have contributed to the current draft, that we are reaching out further to give other people the opportunity to have their say into it as well, and to almost sense check of what's been developed and what we have in the current draft. Does it make sense? Do people agree that those are the right principles? Do they think that there's anything missing from the current set of principles that needs to be included? Does something need to be framed differently, clustered differently? So we've really left this as part of this public consultation to give people the opportunity to reach an even wider stakeholder group. And as part of this, as you'll see on the public consultation website, that it explains a little bit about the principles. It explains, there's a FAQs that, you know, you can look in to understand why they were developed, how we've gotten to this stage, et cetera, as well as the survey. We've also included, because we wanted to use a public consultation to encourage different organizations to really reach out to different organizations and groups and populations that we maybe haven't been able to reach out to during the regional and global consultations. So on the website, we've also included resources to support organizations and groups to do this. So resources that they can use, and we've really encouraged partners to do this, to carry out their own local consultations to then feed into the principles. So on the website, you'll see a survey, which is very straightforward to provide inputs into the current draft of the principles. And please do reach out if anyone has any questions on this. And we've shared that just wide and far as much as we can to really get the word out about the principles, today included. And so, yes, and so once the consultation is finished, we will then take all of the feedback to then further refine and strengthen them before they are launched.
Thank you, Kristen. This is extraordinary. For Recainza, has been such a great experience and honor to be part of all this process. And And taking into consideration that we have viewers that belongs to the digital health environment and organizations that are trying to pull the agenda as well, how can they get involved? I know that in Latin America, they can join the effort led by Recainsa. But tell us, how can they join from other regions around the world?
Yes, thank you so much for that question, because that's exactly what we want. We want everyone globally, across regions, across countries, to really get involved. So I'd say the first thing, which is the most immediate one, which I just talked about, is to have your voice heard during the current public consultation, because the principles are only as strong as those that have contributed to them. So we really want to hear what you think about them and how we can improve them. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it's really important that as much as, we want to see the endorsements from governments, we also really want to see the endorsements from organizations. We want organizations and people across regions and countries to really feel that they see their priorities reflected in the principles and can help really champion this agenda as well, by endorsing, by elevating it, by really championing and advocating for the principles across countries and regions. So we encourage you to help, really amplify it, advocate with governments and regional bodies so that they are endorsing them as well. But not only the principles, as I said, the principles we see as a really critical first step towards the development of a global health data governance framework, but we really also want to see that agenda pushed forward so that the principles endorsed, but they are really used and underpin the development of a global framework, which will really give that kind of steering guidance towards the use of health data. And so, different things, more practical of things that people can do around it. For example, so said, endorse the principles when they launch early in the year, get involved with regional and national events, or hold your own to really help launch and amplify the principles, help ensure that the principles and the awareness on the principles reaches all levels as well. So if you're working at a local level, hold a meeting or, information sessions, or share widely at the local level as well, so that they're really using them. And then ahead of, I mentioned on one of my last slides, there are some kind of key global and regional influencing opportunities, and many more at national level as well, that can really be used to push for and advocate for the political buy-in on this as well. So we really encourage people to, advocate ahead of those, elevate the issues. It could be holding meetings with government officials or regional bodies, holding a side session on the margins of some of these meetings to bring different stakeholders together, but also in the nature of how the principles were developed through a very consultative bottom-up process, make sure that you are involving different stakeholder groups in the discussion as well. Because it's, as much as we want the kind of the political buy-in and adoption so that it steers this process at national level, we really want to make sure that all groups, particularly the most marginalized groups, really have a seat at the table and are part of those discussions and any decisions around it as well.
Thank you, Kirsten. And well, we are running out of time, but I will give you 2 minutes to close your presentation and make a final invitation to all the audience to join all the effort that is being led by Transform Health in the coalition.
Yeah, so first I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the digital health week, and all the work that's being done by Recainsa around this is really fantastic. I'm really happy to be part of the discussion, and to have the opportunity to share more about how we can help strengthen health data governance, really all working together. So I think that's one of my pleas. It's a joint collaborative effort from governments, from organizations, civil society, from communities, it's a joint effort, youth, we all really need to be working together on this agenda. So my final plea is to really just kind of champion this agenda, the need for stronger health data governance, and take the actions you can to push for progress on this agenda, both the principles and then how they can really support and underpin the development of a health data governance framework. So really kind of to get the word out there, help champion it, and ensure that together, collaboratively, we're driving progress on this agenda. So we can really ensure that the digitalization of health systems and the use and collection and use of health data is really driving progress on closing equity gaps, ensuring everyone, all populations, communities at all levels can access health services. So we're really improving equity and progress towards universal health coverage. And enjoy the rest of Digital Health Week.
Thank you, Kirsten. From Recainza, we are committed to support this initiative and any other initiative from Transform Health and the Coalition. And I will change to Spanish. Gracias a todos los que se unieron a esta extraordinaria conferencia. Los invitamos a seguir al pendiente de todas las actividades que estamos organizando desde el Foro de Salud Digital Recainza 2021 en el marco de la celebración de la Digital Health Week. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos y los esperamos en la siguiente sesión en donde vamos a seguir conversando sobre el poder de las redes, el poder del trabajo colaborativo, como lo dijo Kirsten. Entre más personas traigamos, mejores resultados vamos a obtener, porque juntos todos somos más fuertes. Hasta luego.